it was the most intense study or semester I've ever had. We are now going to Cambridge. Is there like as well some kind of tuition that you need to pay? It will be tough, but I think based on our experience as well, it's absolutely worth it. So consider it.
Yeah. Welcome back to Meetings Munich, my friends. I'm so happy to bring you a very special episode with Sebastian today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had a very interesting phone call on Tuesday evening with a friend, and she asked me for advice given the fact that she would like to travel and she doesn't know how. She's always been traveling in a kind of a comfort zone with her family and as well other friends. She doesn't know how to go abroad and like is like kind of afraid of it. This is a very good connection to this episode today, given the fact that maybe you as well are not sure like how you can go abroad, whether it's for like traveling or like study abroad or like research purposes. And maybe we can give you some insights on how we did it in the past, how we might go do it in the future. So very excited about that one.
100%. I think this is going to be a super relevant episode, and I would have liked to have that when I started. So what you can expect from the episode is we're going to really talk to you about all the different aspects, and I'm obviously going to link everything so you can look it up. And maybe to start it off, what are our experiences so that people can kind of set it into context more. I think for me the busiest year was 2019. I think I was like in over 10 cities in over 8 countries, and so for me I started it off a bit atypical, I would say, because I didn't do like a semester abroad, but I rather combined a project study in South Africa, in Joburg. It was with Unternehmertum. I went to kind of traveling a little bit in between, did an internship in the UK, and then started a student consultancy in Mexico. And I also did a semester abroad in Italy. Just recently, really.
Yeah, and going abroad again, like, and when are you leaving?
October, yes. October. So I'm going to go to Cambridge for my master thesis. So that's kind of my story, but I mean, you've been to a lot of places as well, so...
I mean, I guess it all depends on like your family background as well, whether you're like naturally exposed to going abroad. So in my case, my mom is Dutch, raised and born very close to the Swiss border. The majority of my life I lived in like close to Heidelberg, but like in the early days as well, I think it was in my 6th grade, my sister and I went to like India to stay in the family, to New York City, like exchange program, which opened as well like the perspectives on what we had. And then as well I was just naturally interested in like seeing the globe with its different cultures. So I did like a road trip, then later with my sister I went to Africa from like Cape Town to like Nairobi, which was an insanely nice adventure. And then last fall actually I studied at Berkeley. Life dream since I had for many years, given the fact it's like located close to San Francisco. Actually every single day you have the view on Golden Gate Bridge, which is like superb. And it's like in terms of like if you're like interested in innovation, this is like the place to be with Silicon Valley. Currently I'm hoping that I might go to abroad in the near future again for research purposes. I also did like in the past an internship in South Korea, which I absolutely loved. That is fundamentally different. It also opened my perspective that actually educational systems all around the globe are so different. So happy talking about those as well today. What was your motivation to go abroad?
That is a good question. I think actually mainly because I connect with people in a different level. Like I think they all have different ways of living. Like even just German and Colombian, it's like a very different mentality. And I always like to kind of see what fits me and what I can learn from each other. And that was kind of the idea also for me to go to so many different places instead of just one semester abroad, which is not bad or anything. I like doing it as well. And I learned so much about myself, and I really as your friend put it, I pushed myself because I did like sales in South Africa, like which was insane at some luxury hotels, and I was like the most introvert person you can imagine. And like going up to people and selling them something they don't want is like definitely not something you would feel comfortable with.
No, absolutely. I can fully relate to that. I'm just like, you will learn about much yourself, you will just learn about the globe in general, and it's so diverse. And even though if you travel, for instance, like from Vietnam to Cambodia, crossing the border, and you will basically recognize that those people behave fundamentally different. Or also like, I mean, from the European perspective, you might assume that, for instance, Asian countries like China, South Korea, Japan are all the same. But if you have been there, you will realize, actually they are so different. And also you start recognizing at some point, okay, this person is from South Korea, this person is from Japan, which, I would say if you haven't been there, you wouldn't recognize at some point. Minor differences like the nose, But still so interesting.
You're the expert in that.
I wouldn't say that. Back in the days, I would say I was quite good at recognizing who was from where, but nowadays, I mean, this was like 6 years ago, I guess.
Is that on your CV? Like, that would be a fun skill.
This is like, well, and more important than anything else, like recognizing who's from where.
Could be interesting in some situations. So we want to kind of start off with the first one, which is all about university courses and how you can maybe be a free mover. And I mean, I think you hear about summer, winter school, like there are so many offerings, and we just kind of want to share a little bit from our experiences and what you can maybe also consider, which is not part of TUM, LMU, or wherever your university really is from.
Yeah. You have been in Rome. How would you describe, this is like a traditional Erasmus exchange semester, how would you describe that for those who haven't been abroad with like Erasmus, but I assume it's like a fundamentally different university life.
Yeah, and I think that's something I also want to say, like it's really about what you also say, like it's about the individual, like what are you searching for in terms of like international experience, because I was always like caveating it almost a bit like it's not a traditional destination, you know, it's not like a super fancy name, like in Italy it's well recognized, but like international nobody really cares.
I mean, Rome is famous for its history, but like, not for like
for the university, right? And I think, and I went with that very conscious when I went there, that I wanted to do humanistic courses. So actually at TUM at least you need to do 2 which are study related, but then everything else you can choose freely. And so I chose functional medicine, political philosophy, and arts and archaeology.
That's it.
Which came from the idea of like, you know, back in the day humanists did everything, and you can really learn kind of from the different trains of thoughts, and you can do something more. And so that was kind of for me my motivation. Hey, I want to go to Rome and do the artistic side, which is a side which I don't nurture as much. So I just want to also say that, like, you know, it needs to be what are you hoping for, and I think being very conscious in terms of what you're looking for in that destination is really going to help you a lot. And so I did it at Erasmus. It was everything you can imagine. For anybody who likes parties, it's the way to go. I don't know if it's the perfect one for me, but there are like a lot of events. You're definitely going to meet a lot of international students. I think also, and I think that says everybody, like it's not as easy to mingle with locals. So for me, I really made it a point to learn the language, but you don't have to. Like I think you're either way very well versed in Erasmus if you want to really engage with local people, or if you say, hey, I feel more comfortable in the international bubble, let's say, there are more than enough people who are also there for a semester who want to meet new people. Yeah. So I think it's a very kind of safe or nice environment if that's your first international experience, because you can't really fail, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just hard as well, like to engage and make friends, like on a deep level, because I probably have already met friends like the locals or like the full-time students there, and they also like know that you will be leaving soon. But on the other hand, I made at least the experience that the natives also encourage or are like very interested in meeting you, because you can bring so many different perspectives. So in my case, for instance, like in the US, and it's I think well known that like Atlanta is the biggest airport on earth, which is basically the reason, or it's given the fact that Americans love to travel within the United States but do not go beyond that. And so basically if I meet someone from Europe or from Asia, this is actually eye-opening for them and very inspiring.
Yeah. So maybe you can like contrast that a little bit with your experience in Berkeley. So how was that for you?
Actually, Berkeley was the most intense study or semester I've ever had, because the education system is so different. Yeah. So you have like weekly assignments, which we are not used here in Germany too much, unless you are studying computer science. And then you have so many assignments. Sometimes you needed to read a book, do like a case study until the next week, and then it's also so interactive, so you need to participate, and actually you get an oral grade, which I wasn't used to at university at all. But like for me, so the reason why I wanted to go to Berkeley was, as I said earlier, that I was fascinated by like the innovation ecosystem that was happening there, in particular autonomous driving and then AI, and because like TUM does not have like an official collaboration, I said, okay, maybe there are like ways to go there by myself. When I started researching it, I came up with like, actually there are like programs where you can basically go abroad with, and then like be like part of like as well an international community, which was kind of nice. And maybe this is interesting for you. So you can go with like TUM exchange abroad, like you did it, or was it TUM Somics?
It was actually TUM Somics. So for somebody who may not know, just a quick one, your also your department kind of can have other ones. So I'm at the TUM School of Management, so they have their own ones. So it kind of depends on where you're studying within TUM. And then there's also TUM Exchange, which is kind of the global one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. So, like for instance, TUM Summix or like TUM Exchange, they have like specific collaborations with universities abroad, but this is like not including everyone. And for instance, if you have like a very specific dream, and this is not a partner university, you could still figure out a way to go there, whether it's like for study or maybe as well research purposes, if you're like really interested in engaging with the local community over there, wherever it is. And at least this has changed my perspective once I realized it. Yeah.
And I think there are also like smaller ones. If you say like maybe, okay, I don't want to go Freemover for, I don't know, half a year, whatever. There are also like winter and summer schools, which I think are also pretty cool. Like for example, Vancouver, University of British Columbia, they're very popular. And they, for example, have a summer school, which is I think like a month. And it's not too expensive. I thought about doing that at some point. And you know, so it's nice. I think it's really kind of about looking and being proactive and seeing like where do you want to go, why do you want to go there, and then how do you make it happen.
Yeah, it all starts or comes down to basically what are your personal visions and aspirations. Because if you don't know, you will basically look at the Excel spreadsheet and say like, oh, actually Singapore sounds nice, or Rome, and you basically go there. But like as well, if you have like a very natural dream and you think like, oh, I can actually make this realized instead of going somewhere where I actually do not feel like, oh, I really want to go there. So it's like as well the trade-off: do I do what I want, or is it like me driving, sitting in like the next to the driver's seat and basically letting others choose what or where I will go to?
Yeah. 100%. So yes, I think for what we said, I think for the kind of the courses part is really a combination of seeing, okay, what does your university offer, but then not only being limited to that, but also maybe looking Freemover, are there any other options how you can maybe be there and attend university courses.
Shall we talk about funding a little bit?
Yes,
100%. If you go Freemover, it might get a bit more expensive, or at least in Erasmus, I think there all the tuition fees covered.
Yes.
You're now going to Cambridge, even though it is like a little bit different. Is there like as well some kind of tuition that you need to pay?
Yeah, so there's actually tuition you need to pay. I'm pretty sure it's for the US as well. And US is double as much, actually. So I think it really depends. So for example, there's always the DRD ones which you can look up, right? So there's like the
Deutsche Akademische Auslandsdienst.
I think.
Okay.
Sure. We will link it. So there are different ones, like depending if you do Erasmus, so it was like around 500 euros a month, and there's like promos. Then there are also like IFI, which are like for people who does computer science. So there are like a variety of courses, so I would definitely recommend to look that up.
And there are also so many stipends, and like for instance, like there's one that I know of that is in particular like given for like the US collaboration. It's called Fulbright. Exactly. And you can get up to 20k, which is quite a lot of money. It's not like enough to cover like as well living expenses and like tuition completely. It depends also on the program and the university where you will go to, but still I think this is like a lot of money that you can make use of. I think there's as well right now the application phase as far as I know. So if you consider going to the US, you could check that out. And I think Fulbright was initiated to basically foster collaboration. So basically what you can write in your motivational letter would be like something, okay, this is how I basically engage with like international collaboration. This is how I as well proactively gave input to something. And this is maybe the way how I would now foster collaboration between those two different countries in the future or during my stay abroad, because this is, I think, what they are looking for, at least what I heard. So,
Actually, I'm going to do some videos on that actually, on
really?
stipends. Yeah,
that's so nice.
So, because I think there's like a lot of, also some, which do not know, I mean, may not know, like it's also pays off to be part of a like political party or whatever, like economic, like that, a lot of ones which I'm going to cover, and they a lot of times actually help you with things about 10k. It depends on kind of which one you are in, which
very complex as
which they give you for kind of being abroad. So there are like a number of combinations, and like you said, like depending on the country, like France and Germany, for example, they do like a lot of extra money to kind of foster that. That exchange. So research is key, I think. For the funding.
And I think like if you can provide with like information on that, it's so much help for those. I mean, I would even be interested in that one. So like just like to have the transparency. So
you kind of mentioned briefly I'm going to go to Cambridge, so we can also talk a little bit more about the research topic, because I feel like I didn't really know this until like a lot of friends starting doing that, like going to Stanford or like Berkeley, whatever.
Yeah, basically like to manage more in CDTM community.
Yeah.
And beyond that, people do not ever consider it. Yeah, so maybe we can as well foster here some kind of transparency.
I think that's super important because it shouldn't be just in that little community, but it should be open out there.
How did it start? Or how start?
Yeah, basically I think, okay, so it's something which, so I did the film master, right? So yeah, I already did like a conference paper, and I think something which you need to think about in research is, I can understand that you want to go to a specific university, but you also need to keep in mind like what is their value that they're receiving, because it's like a lot of bureaucratic effort for them to kind of bring you over, at least in the UK as well. I'm sure in the US it's even worse probably. So I really started off with the idea like, what am I interested in, what can I show, and for me it was always very clear that like the goal for a lot of people who do research is like papers, right? So I mean, conference better journal. So to kind of be open about that, like how can you give back, and if you go with that buzzword service oriented, or like, you know, how can I give value to the other person, then you're already on a very good start. And
yeah, I think this is like very important if you're like applying. So for me it's very similar. So I have like two mantras. The first one is like maximum value for the other person where you apply, which is like, as you said, indeed papers and publications, and on the other hand like minimize the effort they need to do. So ideally you come or approach them with like a specific research project, so that they basically just need to say yes or no, instead of them thinking, okay, this is Mariana, this is a potential topic that she could do, but this is like a lot of effort, and then basically those people are gonna reject you at some point.
Yeah, and I think you need to also like keep in mind like these people get like loads of emails, I think, and you know, the success rate is not always the best. Like a lot of people do get in, but like it's like, I don't know how many emails you write versus how many responses, and then you can really increase your odds if you're like very, hey, you do this research, I saw your papers, I have this angle, and then they know that you actually put in the extra effort, and it's not only about the university, we all get, you know, and I think that's like a way better starting ground.
Yeah, I think your motivation should be like primarily like, okay, I'm interested in research, I'm interested in what you have done, I want to learn from you, I want to collaborate with you, and not like just like, okay, this is the university. I think the university is just like as well the ecosystem of like smart, bright people that are ambitious at some point. This is at least what attracts me, probably you the same. And then also what I would do is like customize email, try to find some similarities. It's always good if you have like published before, but it's not necessarily. And then maybe as well show determination, show that you're proactive. So for instance, with research, I mean I haven't gone abroad, but I tried once until like COVID hit, 6 days before my flight. But like what I was willing to do is like fly to the US for my personal interview, knock on the door, which sounds crazy, but I was so determined and so fascinated by the research the other person did. So I was considering that, and then like if you look back, all the learning opportunities that you might get, and then like a flight of 600-700 euros, it might be worth it.
And I think also like, I don't know, how can you delight the person?
Yeah.
Like, and then exceed the expectations, and also like, I didn't do that, but like for the UK, I started super early. Like I think I was very conscious, I wanted to go there, and I wanted to look, and I started looking at that, and I think I started like a year before. And I think it's always nice to have for these kind of customized, because you know, this research is not part of like a corporation or something, so they need to like put everything into motion. And something which I think you also need to keep in mind with application is reference letters. A lot of times if you don't come, like for me it was like an intro, like somebody like recommended me, so that's always an easier start, but it's definitely not something which you need to have, like that would be horrible if it's just that way. But then you reference letters, right, from professors or something, and start with them early as well.
Yeah, visa application phase is then like the host university needs to give you issue some documents. So this is like a process of multiple months. But I think like at least based on my experience, the longest time it took always for me is like finding a research topic that sparks my interest and that also fits like to the other person. In particular, if you have like the aspiration of like this should be like, well, should have the potential to be like a publication, so novel and relevant mainly. This is not an easy one. Like when I want to go to the US for like the first research day, this was like a process of like 2 years. where I needed to think a lot about like myself. Okay, what can I do? How can I contribute to the professor? Because this was like in my third bachelor semester, so basically I didn't have any research experience.
Yeah.
And just like I didn't know, okay, what I was naturally interested in.
I think you're gifted because you like it. I'm like, oh god. No, but I think it's like I think you look at it like in a fun way, but don't be. Because I, for example, didn't before the master have so many touch points with research.
Oh, yeah.
And so I feel like you're a bit like, how do I do this proposal? Like, how do I go about this? And then people don't even try because like no idea. And yeah, just I think try it and put in the effort and the time, and then it should work out.
Yeah,
hopefully.
learning by doing. You mentioned earlier you went to the UK to do an internship. Tell us. Why were you motivated to go to the UK? How did it start? People business, that you knew someone, basically, because I would assume it's very hard to get an internship at early age abroad. So tell us.
The UK and a lot of other countries also have like a very different system to Germany, because like here there's like the working student and the internships, and you can basically do it at any time. And there they have like a graduate scheme or like things that lead up to graduate schemes. So basically after your bachelor's, a lot of people don't do masters there, they start working right away. And so that means that even for early bachelors there are actually opportunities for you to go abroad, and then you can apply. And I think a lot of people don't know about this because I was the only British person there, pretty much, and not because I was like so crazy, but just because I applied. And I think so. For example, banking. So I did a banking internship. They have, and that is also true for consultancy, and some tech companies are doing that as well now. There's like a spring internship, so that is just a week. You can do that in your second semester.
Crazy.
And everything is paid, expenses and stuff, so it's a good deal. And then after that first week, you get an offer if you're doing well for the 2 months summer internship, which is then the next year in August, kind of. So you need to keep that in mind with kind of your exams. I was doing anyway my year off, so it didn't really matter. And yeah.
How competitive is it to get in?
It depends on the program, to be honest. Like I think banking is quite competitive. Like I think especially investment banking. But then there are also like different parts which are less competitive. So for example, maybe tech or like HR, you know, like so it kind of depends on your program. But overall I would say once you got the spring internship, it is easier, I would say. And then once you did the summer internship, if you want to, if that's maybe your goal, if you want to maybe work in the UK or something, that could be a very good way to do it actually, because then you get a graduate offer. And
smart.
So I didn't.
But then I would do it in the second semester.
Yeah, but I think that would be then a year afterwards, right? So I did it like in the fourth semester and the summer internship. Okay. And yeah, that was super fun. A lot of new people. They really have a very, like it's very different to the German internships because they have a whole concept. Like they're trying to convince you to go there almost, I had the feeling. So you have like exchange with like C-level people and like
it's
different.
It's like a program.
Yeah, it's like a whole program and you can like rotate. So it's really fun actually and you learn a lot.
So it's well guided and not like, okay, I'm the intern now and I do not know anyone else. Figure it out by yourself. You are like in teams actually also as well. So I think it's quite nice. It's like it's a guided program, so I enjoyed it. But are you still then involved in like the day-to-day business, or are you always okay? Yeah. So you have like day-to-day business. So for example, me, I did like a project management role. Yeah. Just basically because I had done an internship before at a consultancy, and that was super fun because it was like a project, and then you had like you could really be at the project management meetings, and then you could kind of figure out if that is something you like. But then you also had like these events, and in the UK there was actually there was always tea and biscuits like at three honestly, like at the club-wise you could go there, and so it was interesting because you could really see how working cultures are different. Yeah. Agreed. I mean, I was in Korea. Yeah, tell us. And I was 19 years old. And actually back in the days, I wasn't drinking alcohol. And my dad told me, just because I was doing a lot of sports. What changed? And then like my dad told me, Sebastian, you are basically not allowed to say no if someone offers you something. Oh. And it's a very common practice that your colleagues are your friends, basically. And it's a common thing that you basically go for like dinner and then thereafter drinks on your first day, and they might offer you some alcohol and be prepared to be drunk. This was basically the key message he told me. And well, So I was not drinking alcohol until I arrived in Korea. And my internship, I think I stayed in Korea for like 40 days, so not too long.
Yeah.
But out of those 40 days, I was drinking 35 of them alcohol. So this was like a fundamental change. But actually, I really loved it. And well, about the experience, so it was very unusual because in Korea, at least I was the first intern ever in the department. So they didn't know as well, okay, what is like the expectation. I as well was very young, so as well I was not sure like how to integrate myself. I couldn't speak the language, even though I was lucky because like it was like a European or actually German company. So they were like as well kind of international oriented, but if you apply for like a traditional Korean company, this might be a bit tough. If I have like as the main language still Korean, I tried to learn it and failed, which also opened my eyes.
It's not the easiest one.
No, exactly. And I realized, okay, if I struggle learning that language, I now understand why actually some people who are not having like the English or like as well the German alphabet at some point have issues or like struggle learning our languages basically. 100%. So this is like as well opening your eyes, and I think a very interesting or insight. I think that's it. I loved the time. I would not recommend the food too much because I don't like spicy food. I think you like it. Colombia is not?
No, it's okay. Mexico. It's Mexico.
Sorry.
Colombia. I'm bad with spicy food. I hope when I go to Tokyo now that it's not as spicy. Otherwise,
Tokyo is not spicy.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
But I think what you are mentioning, that it's a German company, is actually something which a lot of people can also consider when going abroad for internships, because it's way easier. Like I know a lot of people who went with Lufthansa or BMW or whatever, where if you do it first in Germany, an internship, and then you do well, you can maybe, the odds are way higher for you to be actually sent off.
I think the other ways around is very tough. So for instance, as well, during my time in the US, I tried to get an internship in big tech over there, and I'm not sure how many applications I sent. It was just impossible. I've not even received an email that was rejected, but also I've assumed that the reason is, so I had a student visa, but because I stayed only there for like half a year, I was not allowed, or I didn't have a work authorization.
Yeah.
So, and in the US application system, you always need to tick whether you have like a work authorization. And because I didn't have that one, I couldn't tick it. So I think this was as well a major reason. But if you know, for instance, the colleagues or like the company already, because you did an internship or like working student position here in Munich or somewhere else in Germany or Europe, this could be so much easier.
Because they need to sponsor you, right? So I think that's like a lot of effort. A bit similar to the research. I think more effort because they have to actually pay money for it. They need to have a good reason, I think, to do that, and so that's a way. But something I want to add, like if it's not the US, I think in Europe it's actually quite easy, and people don't consider it as much maybe. So I think Spain, France, and UK, there are like loads of places where you can actually apply even with startups or consultancies. So you just kind of search a little bit. So for example, Zimakucha Partner, they do like marketing, they have like loads of international ones, and I don't know, Personio, Zilones, they have a lot of different programs, not only the big corporates. So I think to stress that it really depends, and just be open about it and see what you
mean, the disadvantage is like that you need to relocate at some point. So this is a bit tough. But on the other hand, like the learning advantage for you personally is so big. So I didn't do it for like 3-4 months in Europe, but still I think this is a very interesting experience that you can pursue if you like. You've been in Joburg.
Yes.
For like a project study, selling luxury goods. Sounds like a crazy story. Tell us what motivated you to go to Joburg. Joburg is Johannesburg in South Africa.
Yes.
Tell us.
Yes, so every time I tell that story, I think people are always like, you can't be serious that it was part of your university program. You all got credits for it, like...
How many?
12.
Oh, that's a lot.
12 credits.
So, that's worth it.
And we went there. So basically, if you're doing TUMPWL or technology management, this might be relevant for you. If not, then you can still listen, because maybe there's something similar to that in university. So basically, we have this project study, right? So that's 12 CTS, where you work in a team. and you can do like you tackle a problem basically for them, and it needs to be in a team. And so we thought, and with some friends of mine, we're like, hey, we want to do this abroad. Is this possible? Can we somehow make it happen? And then it happened that over Academy Consult, so the student consultancy I'm in, there was like this person who had done this a couple of times with the Entrepreneurship Research Institute. So I would recommend them. They have they're quite flexible. So if you come with like a good idea, they might be able to support that. So we had a supervisor from there, and then the person in Johannesburg who basically said, you know, let's make this happen, and he really convinced and had that connection with the ERI.
But how did you figure out that this was like the person that you wanted to work for?
Basically just asking, and I think that's like a main thing with going abroad. Just be super open with what you want to do and tell everybody. It's like a little bit like when you do your founding thing, just tell everybody about it, spread the word, and just see what comes back. And we were just like, hey, this is like something we would like to do. And then he was like, you know what, actually, like I'm thinking about this new venture, come here and try it out. And so basically what we did was like, Spanish sparkling wine, which is called cava, to import it to South Africa and to export South African gin to Germany.
Ooh.
So we did like at some point like a tasting with I don't know how many gins. I can't say that it was any good. Included it in the photos though. So at the end you had to do like a report, and it was just a completely different world. Something, for example, interesting from the culture was that in business you first need to do like a personal meeting, just like a coffee, like no personal talk, no professional talk, just hey Sebastian, how you doing? What's life? Tell me about yourself. And then after you had that like established, then in the next meeting you could do something about professional. But just the kind of the going in right in and saying like, hey, we can sell you this, would have been completely inappropriate. So I thought out of that perspective it was super fun, and I learned actually a lot about kind of entrepreneurial thinking and hypothesis driven, and just it was a good time actually.
So actually this reminds me very much of like a book that is called Cultural Map. Do you know it?
No, but it sounds interesting. We'll link it if we can.
So basically the bottom line is it will describe you how different nationalities behave on like business meetings. So there's, for instance, in Mexico, like an unwritten rule somehow that you do not talk about business in the first meeting. So you talk about like family and friends and soccer, because apparently Mexican people love soccer.
I can second that.
And in Germany we're like, okay, very efficient approach, and then like relatively quickly talk about like the business perspective, okay, what we want. And I think the different perception or like the different communication style as well matters a lot of like building trust and like being at the end as well effective. And I think if you do like a project study, I mean like with Spain, with South Africa and also Germany, you can learn about that a lot and also see like the differences. So this can be a very enriching experience, I think, as well from that point. Yeah,
and I think it really teaches you, like you said, like what do people value, and in what way can you, not that you adapt yourself, but how can you kind of be pleasant as well? Because like I said, I think in Germany...
It's people's business.
Yeah, exactly. And in Germany it would be super unusual if you were like to say like, okay, tell me about your mom or something. It's like, what you
want to
start? No, but I think, and then now that you mentioned Mexico, we also did like a mini founding project. We started like a student consultancy there in Guadalajara, and it was super fun because it was like you said, but like I said, it was the differences, like everything took longer, not to talk in cliches, but it's just the way it is. And but people were super fun and like open to that. So doing actually your self-organized things there, founding project or with the university, just can give you a lot of different perspectives. Which I think is nice.
So look into potential project studies that you can do abroad.
Yeah, 100%.
And Mariana is happy to help, I assume.
Always happy to help. Always happy to help.
Always. So we talked about another topic that you might be interested in. But unfortunately we both don't have experience with that one, but a little bit of experience at least. We just wanted to integrate that as well. So if you're like an undergrad student or like already doing your master's and considering doing another one or maybe as well a PhD, or basically we want to inspire you as well that there's like the option to do like your master's abroad or like a PhD, and it works fundamentally different. So you mentioned earlier that it's not common to do a master's. Everywhere I made the same experience. So I was 25 at Berkeley and considered as like a grad student, And people were like, oh, you're already a grad student. I was like, yeah, this is normal, right? And the same in Korea. So people are just naturally doing their undergrad studies and then basically start working. And also what I learned is, for instance, in the US, that you can start your PhD right after your bachelor's or like your undergrad studies, which is not the case in Europe. So in Europe we have like a very sequential process, and in the US basically you can basically start after your undergrad studies, and then it's a bit longer and also like integrate some kind of like a master's degree where you take as well classes. And it's also fundamentally different in terms of like the way it's perceived. So if I, for instance, start now a PhD position here at TUM, then I would basically apply at the professor or like the chair. Then I would have like interviews, and then basically I get employed, and I get like monthly money as well for like pay. And in the US, this is different. So it depends. Sometimes you need to pay for like PhD positions. Sometimes, or if you're like aiming for like the top universities, it's like funded or for different sources, and it's usually enough, at least this is what I heard, to cover your living expenses and also tuition. But still, you're basically applying for like a program. You write, like, it would be very similar to like applying for like a master's degree with like a letter of motivation, with like transcripts. You might have an interview, and then you're basically part of a cohort. And I also heard that you basically can have like a PhD minor. So basically you can focus on AI safety on the one hand as a majority thing, and then like do biology as a PhD minor, whatever field you would be interested in, maybe like brain or cognitive functions. And I found this is very interesting because it's so fundamentally different.
Yeah, I think to your first point with the master's, so I've got a lot of family in the US, and my aunt was like, wait, you're going to do your master's after your bachelor, but don't you really want to work first? And I was like, no. So it was fun. But yeah, so the PhD topic, I think there are like different ones to consider. Like first off, there are different ways how you can earn your PhD. So I think also in Germany, like you can do it by several publications, or you can do it like by one big dissertation, exactly. And if I look at it in the UK, it's also a lot about funding, so where do you get the resources from. But then, for example, a friend of mine is actually also at CGM, he is in Oxford right now, and he's doing his PhD, and he's also part of the societies and the student life. So I think it's very different in how they approach it, but still super fun. And I think in terms of master, I have like some friends who are doing like Portugal, UK or something. Actually, so some who went to the US, and I think there also in terms of funding, you need to start super early for a lot of them, because I think I don't know how it's with Fulbright, but with DAAD it's like a year before or something. Like I think like October, December or something, like a year before. So if you want to get that funding and you want to do the masters, there are definitely options, but I think you need to be super organized and structured and keep all those deadlines in check. Yeah,
also like for now, I know that if I would consider like a PhD in the US, the application deadlines is mostly like December 1st or December 15th. Already if I want to start next summer, like basically like 9 months ahead of like the starting time. And also you need letters of recommendation, as you have mentioned earlier as well. You basically sometimes need to do like a GMAT or GRE test. This takes some preparation and time.
100%, the tests, and then also something which I think, because I thought about doing my master's in the UK at some point, it's also shorter a lot of times. So a lot of times it's actually just 9 months or like a year, but I mean it's like really 9 months. And so it's just a lot of variables which are I think different, also the costs and everything that you need to consider then if you want to do it abroad, but it's also obviously super fun, I guess.
I mean, I have a very good friend who did his master's in the UK as well. He said it's like very intense, like for 9 months mathematics, and like with masters and master thesis and classes, and it was also like mathematics at Cambridge, so it was very intense. So but like as well after that, you're like, oh, actually my studies are already over, because like we do have like 2 years, and it's still like you still have like a nice time. And if it's like 9 months, it's like time flies so fast.
Yeah, and I think what you said at the beginning with the US, it was similar in Italy, and I would say it's also in the UK. So I think a good thing is to look at how is the education system there. So a lot of them are like very class-based, and you need to be there in presence, and it's like more school almost, I would say, compared to like here. At least for the studies I've done, it's like you can go, you can't, or you don't have to go. Nobody cares really, and you just prepare for your exams. And so I think there's a kind of different expectations, and the experience is just going to be completely different.
Yeah, agreed.
hopefully this gave you a little bit of an overview of kind of the whole program, so the courses, Freemover, research, internships, and just kind of everything else. So if you have any questions, definitely let us know.
Yeah. And I think as well, like in conclusion, or like to summarize it, it all starts with a dream that you might have. And dreams don't work unless you do. And you will face up and downs. I think we both experienced that to a different extent. And yeah, this is like the truth. It was very hard. I think based on our experience as well, it's absolutely worth it. So consider it.
Yeah.
It will be tough, but just go for it. Even if you need to study and you can afford it, if you need to study longer, and maybe as well if you have like the chance to do your studies longer, just try to do it and go beyond just like what is like expected from you. To just write a master thesis, or just like say, okay, I actually can maximize a master thesis with maybe like a publication or like an outstanding experience. Go for it, have fun, and if you have questions, reach out to us.
Awesome. Then until then, all the best.